The same day, a ship landed near the edge of the jungle. A human reporter stepped out with a camera and a small drone. She had seen the leaked footage months ago now. She came to find the girl who said no. Lyra did not want cameras. She did not want praise. She agreed to speak only once. The villagers gathered under the old tree near the center of the village. The drone hovered above, recording the moment. Reporter asked Lyra to stand and say whatever she wanted. No questions, no control, just truth. Lyra stood under the tree, her eyes calm, her voice clear. My name is Lyra. I was assigned to a human soldier. They told me I had to serve. They told me I had no choice. But that soldier looked at me and said something I had never heard. You are a person, not a tool, not a number, a person. That moment changed my life, and now I say this. No one owns you, no law, no command, no name tag. You have the right to choose, you have the right to be seen. I was afraid to speak once, but now I am not, because silence is what they want, and I will not be silent again. The crowd stood in silence, not one sound, not one breath. Then slow claps began to rise, not loud, not forced, just honest. The drone sent the message across the systems again, this time not by accident, this time by choice. Lyra walked away from the tree and sat beside Tom. You did not have to do that, he said. I know, but I wanted to. The days moved on and life in the village grew. More people arrived, some broken, some angry, some lost. Lyra met each one with the same look in her eyes. You are safe now. Tom built a new house near the river. He asked Lyra to help design it. She smiled for hours while drawing the shapes and colors. One evening they sat near the water watching the sun fall behind the hills. Tom looked at Harry. Never thanked you for what? For being brave. Lyra looked at him. You gave me the space to become brave. Took her hand in his and held it gently. She did not pull away. The wind was soft, the sky full of stars. She remembered the day she arrived, cold, afraid, silent, and now she sat free, alive, whole, back in the main system. The program was no more. Laws were rewritten, voices were heard, new paths were made. But none of that mattered to Lyra as much as this simple truth. She had found her name again. She had found her voice. Had found someone who saw her, and she had become someone who could see others. Not all wounds were healed. Not all pain was gone. The chains were broken. The fear was gone. And her life was hers now, not assigned, not given, hers. And beside her sat a human who had once been a soldier, but had always been something more, a friend, a shield, a mirror. And as the stars blinked above and the river moved slow beside them, Lyra whispered one last thing. Thank you for treating me like a person. Tom smiled. You always were one. You just needed someone to remind you. Lyra stared at the message, unable to speak. She knew what this meant. She was not being transferred. She was being sent to disappear. Tom shut the pad and tossed it on the table. He began to pace the room, his boots heavy on the floor. They do not care, he said. They do not see you. Lyra's hands were cold. Her heart felt like stone. What can we do? Tom looked at her, his voice low. We fight back. But I am just one person, so Tom walked to the shelf, took out a small chip, and inserted it into the pad. He began typing quickly, blocking signals, rerouting trackers, hiding her ID code. This will slow them down. It will not stop them. Lyra stood beside him, her voice calm. Now then, what will? Tom turned to her. You trust me, right? Yes. Then we leave. We disappear before they can find you. Lyra nodded without fear. She had been running all her life. This time she would not run alone. They packed light, only what they needed. Food, water, a medical kit, one weapon, and the small book Lyra had been learning from. At nightfall they left the outpost through the back trail. Tom knew a place where deserters sometimes hid, a jungle moon with thick trees and no cameras. Walk was long and dangerous. Lyra kept close, watching every sound, every shadow. Once they heard a drone fly overhead. and hid under rocks for hours. By the third night they reached the jungle moon. It was dark, wet, and full of strange sounds. They found an old shelter made of scrap and stone. Inside were two humans and one alien from another race. All looked surprised to see Tom and Lyra. No words were said, only quiet nods and space offered near the fire. Lyra sat close to the heat, her hands shaking from cold and fear. Tom sat beside her. You did well, I just followed you. Survived, that is more than most. Lyra looked at the fire, thinking about the others who had been assigned like her. How many were lost? How many were gone now? She looked at Tom. Why did you really take me from the outpost? He paused. Because I saw what they were turning you into, and I could not stand it. She was silent for a moment, then said, you risked everything. You had nothing to gain. Tom looked at her and smiled softly. That is not true. I gained you. Lyra felt something break inside her chest. A wall she did not know was still standing. She turned away quickly, her eyes full of tears she would not let fall. The next morning Tom went to scout the area. Lyra stayed behind, helping the others with fire and water. While searching for clean wood, she heard a loud growl behind her. She turned and saw a wild beast twice her size moving fast through the trees. She had no time to run. The beast jumped. Lyra dropped low, rolled to the side, grabbed a sharp stick from the ground, and drove it forward with all her strength. The beast screamed in pain and fell back. Tom came running. Moments later, gun raised, eyes wide. But the danger was already over. Lyra stood breathing hard, blood on her arm, but alive. Tom lowered his gun and rushed to her. Are you hurt? Just a scratch. You saved yourself. She nodded. I remembered what you taught me. Tom smiled with pride. You are stronger than you know. That night Lyra cleaned her wound and sat by the fire alone. Tom joined her and handed her the small book. Want to read? She nodded and opened the page. Her voice was quiet at first, then stronger with each word. When she finished, Tom clapped once and said, you read like a soldier. She laughed softly. That makes no sense. It does to me. Later she asked, what will happen if they find us? Tom looked into the fire. Then we fight. We together. Lyra looked at the stars above, and for the first time in her life, she did not feel like someone else's property. She felt like a person. She felt like a fighter. And somewhere in the darkness above them, command officers read the report of a missing unit, a girl who was meant to obey, a soldier who chose to protect. They would send drones. They would send orders, but Lyra was no longer the same girl who stood quiet in the hallway. She was different now, and she was not alone breaking chains. Sky above, the jungle moon turned gray. With storm clouds, rain poured from the heavens like the stars were weeping. Tom and Lyra sat under a metal sheet held up by tree branches. Fire had gone out, but they stayed close, sharing the heat from their bodies. The other deserters had left during the night, too afraid to stay. Once the warning came, Tom had picked up the signal through the broken tower cam and had found them. They were sending a drone unit to track and capture Lyra. Tom looked at her with tired eyes. We do not have much time. Lyra stayed calm, her voice steady. Then we make each moment count. Tom nodded. There's a valley to the north, thick with fog and sharp rocks, hard to see from the air. If we can reach it, we can hide for a while. Lyra picked up her small bag with the book, the stick she sharpened, and the old water bottle. She looked ready. They moved fast through the jungle, branches slapping their faces, mud slowing their boots. Tom checked behind them every few minutes, his hands tight around his weapon. Lyra stayed closer, eyes scanning for movement. She was no longer the silent, scared girl. She walked like someone who knew her life belonged to her. When they reached the edge of the valley, the air grew colder. The path down was narrow and slippery. Lyra took one step, then slipped her foot, twisting under her weight. Tom caught her just in time, pulling her back up. You okay? Lyra winced but nodded. I can walk. They moved slower after that, helping each other over rocks and fallen trees. By the time they reached the center of the valley, night had returned. They found a cave hidden behind thick vines. Inside was dry and quiet. Lyra leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Tom sat beside her. "We made it for now," Lyra turned to him. "Why do they want me so badly? Because you said no. That simple. Yes, they can control systems, they can break armies. But when one voice says no, it shakes the whole structure." Lyra looked at her hands, the same hands that once shook with fear, now held strength. Outside, the sound of drones echoed in the sky. Tom turned off every device and pressed his back against the wall. Lyra copied him, her heart steady. "If they find us, what do we do? Do not run anymore." They stayed in the cave all night, barely speaking, barely moving. In the early morning, a voice echoed outside. "Soldier Tom, you are ordered to release the Varani unit at once. Failure to comply will result in punishment by law." Lyra stood and walked to the edge of the cave. Tom tried to stop her, but she raised her handi. "Have to speak." She stepped out into the morning light, her arms raised. 3 drones hovered in the air, scanning her face and voice. "I am not a unit," she shouted. "I am not a tool or a thing. I am a person, and I choose to be free." One drone blinked red, recording every word. Another sent the message to High Command. Tom stepped beside her, his weapon low but ready. "She has rights," he said. "You cannot own people anymore." Drones waited for orders, but something strange happened. They did not fire. Instead, they paused, then slowly pulled back, rising into the sky like birds flying away. Tom and Lyra looked at each other, confused. "What just happened?" "I do not know." Back in the core systems, the feed from the drone went viral. Someone inside the command center leaked it to the public. Millions saw Lyra's face, heard her voice. People started to question the program. Why were Varani girls still being assigned like objects? Why were soldiers ordered to accept it? Across the galaxy, protests began. Some humans stepped forward to speak, some Varani to Tom and Lyra did not know this yet. They only knew that the drones did not attack. They returned to the cave for one more night, not speaking, just breathing the same air. In the morning, Tom said, "We cannot hide forever." Lyra agreed. "But maybe now we do not have to." They walked back toward the jungle path, unsure of what waited ahead. But they walked as equals, side by side, not as soldier and servant, not as captor and captive, as people. They found a small village at the edge of the moon where humans and Varani lived together in secret. The leader was an old man with scars and kind eyes. He listened to their story and then nodded. "You can stay here. Are not the first to come searching for peace." Lyra helped rebuild houses, cooked food, taught children how to write. Tom repaired walls, fixed machines, trained others to defend if needed. They found purpose, they found a life. Weeks later, a message came from the central system. The assignment program had been suspended. The words of one girl had changed the wind. She was no longer just an assignment, she was a voice, and now others were speaking to her. Name was Lyra. The village had no walls, but it had peace. It had no guards, but it had safety. Lyra walked through the garden every morning, her hands touching leaves. Her mind calm. The days were simple but full. She taught letters to Varani children and told stories to the younger ones. Sometimes she even read from the book Tom gave her long ago. She did not read with fear now. She read with power. Tom worked with the builders, fixing old machines, lifting heavy stone, helping with farms. People respected him not because he was a soldier, because he listened, because he stayed. Word about them reached far across space, not because of violence, not because of battle, but because of what they had done. Lyra had spoken, and the galaxy had listened. Her voice had opened a door. Others were afraid to touch back. In the central system, officers argued, and leaders pointed fingers. Some wanted to hide the past, others wanted to fix the future. The companion Assignment program was now under full review. Many humans stepped forward and said they never believed in it. Some Virani came forward too and told their own stories, painful stories but true. Inside the village, Lyra tried not to think about politics or systems. She focused on growing things. Tom, however, kept watching the signals, the news, the quiet war in the background. One morning, he called Lyra over and showed her a message. Program is being shut down. Lyra read the words twice, then sat down. Slowly, she said nothing for a while, then whispered, "So, it is over." Tom looked at her. "Though it is just beginning." She looked at him, confused now. "We build something better now. We teach others." Lyra nodded. The assignment, the war was over, but the wounds were still open across the stars. The Virani Empire had fallen, and the humans had won. Peace had come, but it was not kind. Under the new treaty, the Virani were forced to give something they never imagined. They would their own people, not as slaves, not in name, but everyone knew the truth. The humans called it the Companion Assignment Program. Each human soldier was given one Virani assistant. The Virani called it something else. They called it surrender. Lyra stood in the cold hallway of the military outpost, her hands tight in front of her body, her eyes on the ground. She was just 18 cycles old, but she had seen her city fall, her parents taken, her world burned. Now she was about to be handed over to a human soldier. Her heart was not beating fast. It was slow, heavy, like it wanted to stop. A loud voice called her name. Lyra. She stepped forward without looking. A human officer pointed to a tall man standing at the edge of the room. "This is your assigned soldier," the officer said. "Name is Tom. Serve him well." Lyra looked up for a moment. Man was tall with brown skin and tired eyes. His uniform was clean, but his boots were covered in dust. He did not smile. He only gave a small nod. "Follow me," he said. Lyra walked behind him through the corridors, out into the sunlight, and toward a small transport. She expected orders, commands, maybe even anger, but he was silent the whole way. When they reached the small outpost where Tom lived and worked, he opened the door and let her in first. She paused, unsure. "Go on," he said again, not unkind but not soft either. Inside was quiet. One small bed, a table, a shelf with books, and a couch. Tom pointed to the couch. "You can rest there if you want." Lyra did not speak. She stood still, waiting for instructions. He noticed inside. "You hungry?" She gave a slow nod. He handed her a protein bar and a bottle of water. "Eat," he said, then sat on the floor near the window. Lyra sat on the edge of the couch and ate slowly, watching him. She had been told humans were cruel, cold, always angry, but this one seemed almost empty. After a long silence, he spoke again. "I did not ask for this," he said. "I never wanted someone assigned to me." Lyra lowered her eyes, expecting rejection, but then he added, "That does not mean I will treat you badly. I do not believe in owning people. You do what you want here. I will not stop you." Lyra looked up, unsure what to say. She had been trained to follow, to obey, to accept anything, but this human was not giving her orders, was giving her space. "Why?" she asked softly. He looked at her. "Because you are not a thing. You are a person." That night, Lyra lay awake on the couch, her eyes staring at the ceiling. She remembered the faces of other assigned companions. Some were bruised, some cried in silence, some never spoke again. But here she was lying safe in a room with a human who had not raised his voice or hand. Next day, she woke up early and began cleaning the small space. She washed the table, folded the blanket, fixed the shelf. When Tom came back from his morning patrol, he saw everything spotless. He frowned. "You do not have to do that." Lyra stood still. "I must know," he said firmly. "You must not. You are not here to serve. You are just here. That is enough." She looked confused. "Then what do I do?" He shrugged. "You live, you rest, you learn. If you want, I can teach you to read human books, or you can just sit and do nothing. It is your choice." Choice, that was a word Lyra had not heard in many cycles. The next few days passed slowly. Tom kept his promise. He never forced her to do anything. He showed her how to use the screen pad, how to make food, how to write her name in English. She did not smile yet, but she no longer looked at the ground. One evening, while the sky outside turned red with sunset, Lyra asked a question. "Why are you kind to me?" Tom was sitting by the window holding a small book. He looked at her for a moment, then said, "Because no one was kind to me when I needed it." Lyra watched him closely. There was sadness in his voice, pain behind his calm face. She did not ask more, but something changed in her, a small light, a soft breath, a thought. Maybe not all humans were cruel. Maybe this one was different. Maybe he saw her as something more than a tool. The days turned into weeks, and Lyra began to speak more. She asked about human food, about the stars, about books. Tom answered each question with patience. He never laughed at her, never shouted, never pushed, and for the first time since her world ended, Lyra felt something she thought was lost hope. But somewhere far above, in the offices of command, someone was watching their file, and soon a message would come, one that would try to take that hope away. But for now, in a small, quiet room on a distant world, a human soldier and a Varani girl sat across from each other, sharing silence and peace. And Lyra whispered to herself, "I am not a thing, I am a person, and he sees me." The wall between them. Lyra woke early each morning, long before the sun rose. She no longer waited for commands, no longer looked for orders. Instead, she moved quietly through the small room, stretching her arms and breathing slowly. Each breath felt easier than the one before. Tom always left early for patrol. He never told her to wait, never asked her to stay, but he always left a note beside the couch. Sometimes it was just a word like food, or safe, or back soon. Other times it was a sentence, "Drink more water today," or "Try reading page 5 again." Lyra kept every note folded neatly under her pillow. She did not know why. Maybe because they were hers, maybe because someone thought about her enough to write something. One day, Tom returned early. His face looked tired, and his arm was bleeding. Lyra ran to him without thinking and grabbed the med kit. "Sit down," she said, her voice firm. For the first time, Tom blinked in surprise, but sat down. She cleaned the wound, her hands shaking a little. "Where did this happen?" "Training field," he replied. Short sentence, no drama. Lyra finished wrapping the cloth, then looked at him. "You could have died," he shrugged. Not careless, just honest. "Happens sometimes." She stared at him, her heart heavy. "Why are you like this?" Looked at her confused. "Like what? You act like your life does not matter." Tom leaned back against the wall, his eyes on the ceiling. "I used to think that not anymore. Now I know it matters, at least to one person." Lyra felt her throat tighten. She looked away quickly, pretending to fix the kit later. That night, while they shared a meal of dry bread and soup, Lyra asked a quiet question. "Can you teach me?" "Teach you what?" "How to be strong." "You are already strong." "No, not like that. I mean strong like you, like human soldiers." Tom looked at her, then nodded. "All right. We start tomorrow, but only if you really want to." She nodded. "Without fear, I do." Next morning, Tom took her outside into the wide field behind the outpost. He showed her how to balance, how to breathe, how to move fast and stay low. Lyra followed every step, her eyes focused, her body tense. She fell many times, scraped her knees, bruised her arms, but she never gave up. After an hour, she was covered in dust and sweat. Tom handed her water and said nothing, but his eyes said everything. Was proud. Days turned into weeks, and the lessons continued. Tom taught her how to stand without fear, how to use her voice, how to say noon. Day during target practice, she missed the mark again and again. She dropped the tool and stepped back. "I cannot do this," she said, frustrated. Tom walked over, picked up the tool, and placed it back in her hands. "Yes, you cannot today, maybe not tomorrow, but you will. You always do." Lyra looked at him, her eyes wide. Do you really believe that? I don't know, one ever believed in me before. Then they were fools. That night, Lyra stood outside the room under the stars. The wind was soft, the night quiet. Tom stepped beside her, silent for a while. You know, he said, I once had a sister. She was small and loud, and always running around. Lyra listened without speaking. She died during the early years of the war. Our home was hit. She did not make it. Lyra looked at him. I am sorry, he nodded. That is why I fight, not for orders, not for glory, but so no one else loses what I lost. Lyra looked down. My brother was taken too. They said he would be trained, but he never came back. Tom placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Then we both carry something heavy. Maybe we can carry it together. Lyra did not answer, but she did not move away from his hand either. Next day, an officer arrived at the outpost. He wore a clean uniform and sharp eyes. He looked at Lyra, then at Tom. She is still here. Tom nodded. She is learning. She is not a fighter. She is not a soldier. She was assigned to assist you. Use her for recon, or pass her to another unit. Tom's face turned cold. She is not a tool. The officer stepped closer, his voice low. She is not a citizen either. Remember that. After he left, Lyra stood near the wall shaking. Tom walked over and placed a blanket around her shoulders. They cannot take you. You do not own me either, she said, voice soft. I know, but I will still fight for you. Why? Because someone should. That night, Lyra opened one of Tom's books and tried to read a whole page. She stumbled over the words, but kept going. Each line felt like a mountain, but she climbed anyway. When she finished, Tom clapped slowly, smiling. She laughed quietly. The sound strange but warm. It was the first time she laughed since the war. Outside, the stars blinked like silent watchers. Inside the room, something had changed. Wall between them was thinner now, not gone, but not solid either. And somewhere deep inside her heart, Lyra whispered a truth she had never dared to believe. Maybe she was more than just assigned. Maybe she was wanted orders from above. Wind carried a strange silence that morning. Lyra felt it the moment she stepped outside. Tom was already back from patrol, his face dark, his jaw tight. He stood near the screen pad reading something again and again. Lyra stopped by the door, her voice unsure. Is everything okay? Tom did not answer at first. Then he turned the screen to her. It was a message from Central Command. Lyra was to be reassigned, not to another base, not to another soldier, to the front lines. He wanted her as part of a scout unit in Sector 9, area filled with landmines, old weapons, hidden dangers.